Shalom, everyone, and welcome to Parsha Talk, the best Parsha Talk ever, the original Parsha Talk.
Often imitated, never equaled.
Exactly. I am Rabbi Elliot Malmet, speaking to you still from Highland Park, New Jersey. With me in person is Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanowski, coming to you from Woodstock, New York, and on the phone from Willsboro, New York. That's somewhere near Burlington, Vermont, Lake Champlain. Rabbi Barry Chesler, it's great to see you, hear you. Shalom. How you doing?
It's great to be here.
So what are you doing up there, Barry Chesler?
Well, we're taking a week vacation in this beautiful setting. We're right on the water, so we can see the lake in front of us, and the hills of Vermont across the way. Burlington is just a bit to the north. And I was telling my family today we went on a hike, Sable Chasm, that it would be great to wake up every day and just look out on the water like this.
Very good.
I think I could live like that.
Things in Woodstock are doing okay?
These are wonderful. After these isolated months in Manhattan, it's great to get out. I feel bad for the owners of this house we've rented, though, because we're not leaving. We're staying here. They're going to have to call the police to throw us out.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we're here to talk about the Parsha. This week, two Parshiot, Hukat and Balak. We are combining these two Parshiot to synchronize the liturgical calendar of the diaspora with the land of Israel. Land of Israel, Jews are already reading Parshat Balak, so we are going to catch up with them. Hukat starts out with a passage that is familiar to us from Parshat Parah. This is the set of rules regarding the red heifer. The red heifer, let me take the lead here. This is the way that the people of Israel purify themselves, mainly from contact with the dead. The red heifer, a specific animal that is red completely, is burned in a ritual way, slaughtered and burned entirely. And the ashes of the red heifer are mixed with a water, and they become a ritual, you'll forgive the words, detergent. They're a ritual detergent that purifies those people who have the highest degree of impurity, namely the contact with the dead. And so our conversation relating to this whole institution is a conversation relating to the rational and irrational. Barry, I'd like you to talk about the rational and irrational in Judaism, maybe making mention of Rashi's comment here, and we'll interact on this whole question of, does the rational overrule the irrational? Does the irrational have a place within religious life? Why don't you take it from there?
Okay, thank you. So Rashi's comment on Zot Hukat HaTorah, this is a chok of the Torah. Lefi Satan v'umot ha'olam monin et Yisrael lomar ma hamitzvah zot ma ta'am yesh ba lefichach katav ba chukah k'zeirah hi milifnei ein lecha reshut laharher achareha. That the Satan, the adversary, and the nations of the world are going to admonish the Jewish people, saying, what kind of a mitzvah is this? It is irrational. And therefore, the Torah explicitly says, yes, it is irrational. It is a decree from God, and we're not allowed to question it or to think too deeply about its meaning. It is what it is. And we have this curious phenomenon where the ashes are going to purify those who are impure, and at the same time make impure everyone who comes into contact preparing the ashes. And it strikes many as being certainly non-rational, although some would claim that it is irrational. And I think what Rashi is reminding us is that even though many of us are on a quest to find out the Tamei Mitzvot, the reasons for the commandments, and we tend to follow only those commandments that make sense to us, that there's a realm in religion where there's a mystery. And as one of the singers that I'm fond of, Iris Dement, used to sing, sometimes we have to let the mystery be, and that's what this ritual is about. That at its core, we have a mystery that we participate in by doing rather than by thinking.
Jeremy, how about weighing in on this?
I think it's really important that there be an element of mystery. I mean, any serious conception of God is something that's beyond human ken. Like in the words of one of the medieval theologians, if I knew God, I would be God. Right? To understand with a certain kind of thoroughness what the divine would be is a sort of outrageous theological hubris, because part of what it is to be a mortal human being is to understand that there is a mind and an intelligence that is a non-human order to the world. And so being a human being, being a religious human being, means addressing yourself from my perspective of mortality and limitedness, finitude and physicality towards what is transcendent. It's also, of course, true, though, that that people can't, that's a piece of religion, but as a, we are teachers of Judaism, you can't be invoking that every day, right? You can't walk around saying, you won't find this meaningful or understand it, but you got to do it anyway because it's just, it's just beyond your ken. I think we want to help people feel that they're attached to living in the light of something that's beyond their ability to understand, but not too much of that, because then religion becomes not just supra-rational, beyond the rational, but like downright irrational and kind of crazy. So most mitzvot, Rambam says, listen, I've been able to understand most mitzvot, and if mitzvot don't have ta'amim, then God is portrayed as arbitrary, and that's not good either.
I think that's precisely where we have difficulty. And I in thinking about this, would say, look, we may not know the reasons for it, or the reasons may not be readily available to us because we don't speak in this vocabulary. We don't speak in a vocabulary of blood as a detergent ritual, blood as a purifying thing. We don't speak in languages of sacrifice. We don't speak in symbolic ways. But for people who did, of course, this was truly awesome. Look, I mean, we all have things that we relate to and things that we don't relate to. Okay, for example, okay, today is July the 2nd. It's the second day of Canada Day in the diaspora. All right. All right. No, but people don't understand. Me and other Canadians, we talk about the reverence to the Stanley Cup. It's a piece of silver. I mean, people take the cup, they go around with it, they kiss the cup. If you dropped in from Mars and you saw the way people behave with the cup, you'd think this is crazy. Okay, baseball. We talked about this. Standing up in the seventh inning. Who said it's not rational? In other words, within the culture, within the language, and within these kinds of folkways, all of these things make sense. There is a certain consistency.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying, while accurate, is in a certain way it's a little bit flat. Here's what I mean by that. It's absolutely true that we have certain conventions, and shofarot come from a certain kind of horn, and you can't mix meat and milk. Shofarot come from a certain kind of horn, but not cows. Okay, and you cannot mix meat and milk, and those things make sense to us because they accurately describe the way that Jews behave. But they're conventional, and we've agreed, and we don't use cow horns. But if we forbade ram's horns and only used cow horns, that would make sense. If we forbade the separation of meat and milk and said you had to join meat and milk, that would make sense too. But something like when I say mystery, what I mean is not only that I find something mysterious because it's not my vocabulary, I mean that it brings my mortal soul into contact with something that I can't quite understand but recognize as beautiful and holy.
So let's use the shofar as an example. The sound of the shofar, the experience of hearing the shofar, brings you into a certain kind of spiritual zone. I experienced that. I'm sure you have a similar experience where you can't describe this, you can't explain it. It's ineffable. It's undescribable. And maybe we are approximating something in the use of the ritual. We're approximating something that we can't really describe. Barry, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I'd like to add a comment. Rabbi Louis Jacobs, one of the great English rabbis of the 20th and beginning of the 21st century. So he divided the commandments into three. There are those that are moral, which we're compelled to do. There are those that are immoral, which we seek ways to change. And then there are those that are non-moral, which we should observe because of the weight of tradition. And the example that he gave for the non-moral commandment was shatnez. And shatnez is this commandment where we're not supposed to mix linen and wool. Those men who have gone to Mo Ginsburg's in Manhattan saw that all the suits had little stickers on them saying that they were inspected for shatnez to make sure that no mixing of the linen and wool. Most people that you ask today, especially in the non-Orthodox world, would say that shatnez is a ridiculous commandment, one that has no meaning, and one that we do not need to follow. But Rabbi Jacob suggested is that because it's not a moral commandment, we actually should follow it because that's part of our tradition. And what speaks to me about this is that there are things that we try to explain too much. I think Jeremy was alluding to this, that there is a mystery to our existence, and we have to tap into it sometimes as a mystery and not think all the time that we have to explain it.
Yeah. Fascinating. I think. Look, it's going to compel certain Jews. It's not going to compel certain Jews. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's really important. There's 613 mitzvot and innumerable rabbinic expansions, and I think that a religious person, I mean, we're conservative rabbis, so it speaks to our communities, but I think, even the communities with the great big black hats and the long black coats, there are things that people really emphasize, and they become like just a total master of this or that commandment. And I think that, it's valuable to say, you pick and choose, not because you're lazy and arbitrary, but you pick and choose because certain things respond, your soul resonates more. Some people's souls will resonate more with the mysteries. Some people's souls will resonate more with the mathematics of tipat chalav shenafla, because they're a little drop of milk falls into the pot and you got to figure out what to do about kashrut, and so I think it's great that there are 613 mitzvot, so we can find the ones that speak to us the most.
Indeed. Okay, so let's move on. There's so much material in both of these parsha. The death of Miriam. Okay, so let's take a few moments. The people go, and then it tells us, of course, that Miriam dies. She's buried there. So it's at that point that the people turn on Moses because there was no water. And there's a beautiful midrash that says, as Miriam was alive, Miriam's well accompanied the people on the journey. Once she died, the water stopped, and that's precisely why we have the juxtaposition of the death of Miriam and the story of the complaints about water. Just take a moment to say, Be'er b'zchut Miriam, it's the zchut, how would you translate b'zchut? In the merit of, okay? And you think about so many extraordinary people in our communities, you have something which is at the merit of someone else, someone's devotion or someone's kindness, etc. And Miriam stands in for that. But this moment of the complaining of water is really another great crisis in Moses' leadership. Jeremy, I don't know, do your congregants ever complain to you about lacking anything?
About, one thing that, that I miss about not being in shul, being able to have, they complain about the quality of Kiddush all the time.
Well, we have to be careful here because we don't want to alienate many of our congregants who are watching this, but we're saying this with love and joy and longing. We miss this. This is part of the interaction of rabbinic life. What is it that really that drives us to complain? So Moses is told. Go ahead, Barry.
What I wanted to add is that the phrase in the first verse of chapter 20 is Kol Ha'edah, the entire community, and that's really what's been missing since the advent of COVID-19, is that our community is diminished because we are not physically with each other,
Okay.
and that's a real loss.
I'm going to use that in my parsha sheet this week. Okay, that's a great one. Okay, so again, Moshe and Aaron fall on their faces. We know how we feel about that. And then God says, "Kach et hamateh, take your staff, v'hakel et ha'edah, gather them up, atav Aaron achicha, you and your brother Aaron, v'dibartem el hasela, speak to the rock, leinehem, in front of their eyes, v'natam memav." We'll stop there. Okay. I don't know about you, but if I was told by God to speak to a rock, I'd say, what? What? I mean, how do you react to that? Unless, of course, you are saying, of course, I'm an obedient servant of God. I will do whatever you say. You say, speak to the rock, speak to the rock. Jeremy, you want to?
Well, I have my own interpretation of the story, which was a little bit different, which I'll share with you in a second. You know, our listeners might remember or might want to know that back in Shemot, there's a similar episode, and there Moses is told to speak to hit the rock, rather. And so among the interpretive methods that one might use to understand this story is that they're really one story, and some of the Mefarshim say that it is just one story retold twice with different emphases. And some of them would say it's two different stories, and Moses should be totally forgiven because he just repeated what God told him to do back in Exodus. And come on, man, yeah, you're changing the instructions in a very subtle way. So Moses really is completely blameless because he's doing the same things that worked last time. However, there are a number of things about Moshe's actions here which stand in for criticism. One is that he yells at the people and says, "Shimuna hamorim anotzi lachem mayim min hasela." Listen up, you rotten rebels. And the punishment was that he yelled at them and he was so ungenerous towards them. The punishment was, will we bring you out? Will we bring you water from this rock? No, it's not us, it's God. But I have a different interpretation, which is as follows. Many interpreters read this story and they say, oh my gosh, Moshe's punished so harshly. He doesn't get to enter the land, and Aaron, he doesn't seem to do anything, and he's punished too. What's the deal? I think that actually the Torah is being subtle, and as the Torah is usually subtle, and we're actually knowing that Moses and Aaron are punished for something else, and that is that Aaron is really being punished back from the golden calf, and Moses too. Moses, after the golden calf, he does something with rocks and hitting, and he breaks the tablets. And so here we have an episode where Moshe is again doing something bad with a rock and hitting the rock, and it's an act of violence. But really, between the lines, if you're paying close attention, in my opinion, is a reference to him breaking the tablets way back there in Shemot.
Interesting. Barry, you want to weigh in on this?
So one of the things that struck me this time is that God often gets angry with the Jewish people throughout the Torah, and there never seems to be any criticism of that. But when Moses gets angry, he is punished severely. And in light of our earlier conversation, we know and we try to internalize that we're created b'tselem Elohim, we're created in the image of God, but we should never think that we act like God, that God's realm of action is very different than ours, and what might work for God doesn't necessarily work for us. I, in my reading of the story, have been influenced by the reading of Jacob Milgram, who connects it with the role of the Egyptian magician, and that Moses' sin here was that he appeared like a magician, that in fact he was not supposed to speak and talk at the same time, which was the way that Egyptian magicians performed their magic. He was supposed to simply act at the rock without speaking. And the way that Milgram understands the speaking at the rock, that was locational, that he was supposed to address the people when he was supposed to speak before the rock.
So we use v'dibartem el hasela, v'dibartem, you speak, the object of speaking is the people?
Like lifnei hasela, in the presence of the rock.
Interesting.
That's where Moses was. He was at the rock.
Yeah.
But he was not supposed to speak and hit the rock at the same time. And that in so doing, he committed this grave sin, and it was such a breach of faith that it could not be repaired. Right? There are some things. Excuse me.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there are some things that we do that simply are beyond repair. That once certain trust is broken, you really cannot get it back. When I used to teach this in high school, I would mention a story that took place when I was a pulpit rabbi. My wife Carol used to go shopping at a makolet, a kosher grocery store in the next town over on Friday morning, and she goes one week and they're closed on vacation. It wasn't quite a vacation, but b'ratzon, that was done free will, but the mashgiach, the young Israel rabbi of the town, closed him down because he was selling the tags that identified kosher poultry as kosher to a non-Jewish truck driver who presumably was using them to put them on non-kosher poultry and make a great profit. And what I would ask my students is whether they thought that this guy could open another grocery store in another town. And most of them agreed that anyone who heard the story would not go to that grocery store because you can't repair that trust, right? Kashrut in this instance is based on trust. We rely on the mashgiachim, and once the mashgiach violates the trust, you can't get it back. Moses, once he appears like an Egyptian magician, cannot undo that. And the only punishment that gets the message across is to make sure that it's Joshua who will lead the people into the land of Israel, because then they'll know, the people that are marching with him, that God is the true leader and not their earthly representative.
Well, that's a fascinating interpretation. I think I've been persuaded, although I would add one footnote, which is a friend of mine says, when you asked how to talk, to talk to a rock, I mean, how do you talk to a rock? A rock only understands hitting.
That's really big. That's really big. There's a wonderful Hasidic passage of Levi Yitzhak of Berdichev, who says that that the polarities of speech and violence are acted out here. That as a leader, you can usually, the Midrash says that Moses smacked the rock once, and a few little drops came out, and then he smacked it again, and the water came rushing out.
Yeah.
Levi Yitzhak says that if you're a leader of people, you can sometimes beat them into doing what you want, but they're not really going to give you everything they have to give. You got to really persuade them to want to give everything they have, and no matter how much you hit them, it's not gonna happen.
Well, I think your point is worth really thinking over, which is the boundary between speech and violence. And look, we are living in a time when we see that happening over and over again. But let's move on.
Well,
go ahead.
It's also remembering before we leave the story that when we go to the kotel, we speak to a rock, and most of us don't have any problem doing that.
Okay, so we have, in addition to the death of Miriam here, the death of Aaron. And I would add, maybe as a footnote, look, there's a reason why Moses is a little bent out of shape. His sister just died, and maybe he has a premonition that Aaron's time is limited. Never an easy experience to lose a sibling and to function in a leadership role, directly after that. There may be something to say that. But they move on by Yisumi Kadesh Vayavo Bnei Israel Kol Eda Hor Hahar, to this place called Hor Hahar. Moses is told to take Aaron and Eleazar, his son, and basically to strip Aaron down and to put the clothing on to Eleazar. It's a remarkable passage. The death of Aaron is something that is very sad for the people. It says, "Vayivku et Aaron 30 yom kol Beit Yisrael." The people mourn Aaron for 30 days, kol Beit Yisrael. And I'm thinking of the death of Moses. Moses, when he is told he's going to die, he has a lot of envy. He envies his brother Aaron because everyone loved him. Moses, unfortunately, didn't love. They only revered him. Okay. Let's move on into Parasha Balak, and then we'll skip over the encounter with the Canaanites, the encounter with Sichon, Edom, Sichon, and Og, all of which are really, really important. The song of the well. We have a few minutes to talk about Balak and Bilam. Who is Balak? Who is Bilam? Jeremy.
Balak is the king of Moab, and he hears that the children of Israel have come up out of Egypt, and there's so incredibly many of them. And I'll turn it to you in a moment, Elliot, to talk about your theory about the way Balak behaves. But there are so many of them; they are going to eat me like an ox eats the grass, and I'm in real trouble. So there's a famous guy, and actually maybe the only, maybe somebody else that I'm not thinking of, but the only person who I think is actually attested, a person in the Torah who is attested outside the Torah and in other literature. Bilam is a famous sorcerer. So he hires the most famous sorcerer in the Middle East to come and he hopes curse this people so that they will suffer. So Elliot, tell us a little bit about what you think about Balak and his approach to Am Yisrael.
I think Balak is an anti-Semite, as my late grandfather would say, an anti-Semite bastard. Okay, sorry for people.
Bastard.
And he comes in a long tradition of anti-Semitin, starting with Pharaoh, who is really the arch anti-Semite. And within the biblical, within the canon, we have a few more, but Haman is, of course, the culminating anti-Semite. Balak is somewhere in the middle of the continuum between Pharaoh and Haman, because exactly as I said, Jeremy, here is his way of characterizing the people. I mean, it's so offensive. It's so offensive to even read it. He says, look, they're going. You quote it. They're going to mess up my land, right? I mean, how many anti-Semites throughout history have been saying that? Or said, look at they're filthy, they're ugly, they're disgusting. The way they conduct themselves in public, the way they travel, the way they all they want to do is chew up the land there. And so that's what I say, Balak, you're an anti-Semite, you're disgusting anti-Semite, and you hired someone who you thought was an anti-Semite to curse. And you know what? Here's the bottom line. Mevorechecha Baruch or Arechecha Arur, or the other way around. Those who curse you are cursed. Those who bless you are blessed. And this is the culminating moment, linking the story of Abraham to this moment, because when Abraham comes on the scene, God says, "I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you." This is the ultimate portent for the anti-Semite. The anti-Semite will ultimately result in his downfall. Barry, you want to weigh in on this?
Well, I want to turn to Bilam for a moment. So I think Bilam is known for a lot of great words. He has some of the most beautiful passages in the Torah. And one of the phrases is, Hein ha'am levadad yishkonu b'goyim lo yitchashav. That he's looking out at Bnei Israel, and he says there are people who dwells alone. They're not reckoned among the nations. And I wonder, Elliot, in light of your remark, whether we see that as some kind of premonition of anti-Semitism. This way, even in the words of a bracha, of looking at the Jews as being different.
Yes, I think that we often have this capacity to transform that which I wouldn't put the responsibility on Jews for this. I think that for example, the incredible success that Jews have in various domains is seen as an asset and seen as a kind of mystery. And that's exactly, it's an extra power. And, we would like to assume responsibility for that power, but maybe that is something that is emergent only in the head of someone who sees extraordinary power where it's not rational.
This whole point I think is quite interesting, because Bilam says that, Am levadad yishkon v'goyim lo yitchashav. They're not like other people, and that might be anti-Semitic, and it also might be something we're proud of.
Yeah.
Because we are ethnically bounded, and we like that. I like being ethnically bounded. I think that only with ethnic boundaries do you have definition. So I don't want other nations to look at us and say, look at those weirdos. And at the same time, I want us to have a strong sense that we are bounded together, and we're not just disappearing in the whole raft of other nations.
Interesting. Let's
So
conclude.
the question
Go
is,
ahead, sorry. Go ahead.
so the question is, this is the words of the outsider looking at Bnei Israel. How do we as Jews look at it? Do we actually see ourselves as being different? And what do we do, especially today, to maintain our difference? Or alternatively, are we on this path of assimilation and integration? And I guess we're moving towards the middle of the 21st century already. You know, this is a key question in the Jewish community. How American are we going to be? Or in your case, Elliot, how Canadian?
North American.
And how Jewish are we? In other words, where are the boundaries? How do we see ourselves in the larger culture?
So let me conclude with this. Of course, Bilam gives us the sentence that we recite upon entering a synagogue. Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, Israel. And along what you said, Barry, which is that is the way an outsider sees the people. What is it that we are trying to do when we invoke a verse said by a Gentile prophet about the people of Israel, and as we walk into our synagogue? So my theory is we are trying to recreate the desert experience the minute we walk into the synagogue by invoking a desert myth, a desert story. And we're also internalizing what it means to be a people that is looked at from the outside. I don't know if you want to react to that.
That's beautiful.
Thumbs up from Jeremy Kalmanovsky, who is visible here. Barry, are you giving me a
Barry,
thumbs
you're looking
up?
great.
Yeah, I think that when we come into the synagogue, we're invoking it as a prayer. Would that it be so? That what we want to do is create in our synagogue the reality of Bilam's words.
And
That we are Ohalacha Yaakov and Mishkanotacha Yisrael. That there is something valuable in us, and especially when we come together for prayer, when on some level we're addressing the mystery of the divine, we want this to be a true statement, and therefore we say it. You know, people tend to be critical of themselves sometimes, more so than outsiders are, and sometimes it's important to remember that we don't only look at ourselves the way we see ourselves, but we have to look at ourselves the way others see us, and sometimes others judge us much more favorably than we might judge ourselves.
beautiful. I think it's a wonderful note to end on here as we are understanding the entry into synagogue life, the entry both into the zone of the summer, of course, which has already begun, thinking about tents and dwelling places, thinking about what we could be and how we are seen. All of these are wonderful things to think about. So it's a great pleasure. Thank you very much, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanowski, Rabbi Barry Chesler, and continue to enjoy your time away. And with that, we'll say to each other and to our 4, 5, or how many listeners, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
See you
shalom.
next week.